Hi, I'm Tom Richardson, BookNet Canada's Bibliographic Manager. This is the Standards Overview for TechForum 2021. We want you to participate in standards. It can be as easy as contacting us with an idea or a problem, participating in one of our products' user groups. BookNet Canada's products always strive for compliance with standards, or joining a committee. BookNet Canada is a non-profit organization that develops technology, standards, and education to support Canadian publishing companies, booksellers, wholesalers, distributors, sales agents, industries associations, literary agents, media, and libraries across Canada. Our staff work with other companies to solve supply chain problems using standards. We ensure compatibility with US and international standards. What I want to emphasize is that standards exist to benefit their users, and participation is how you maximize that benefit. So, what standards are we involved in? EDI is the most mature and important standard, really, and it's usually forgotten. We are involved in subject standards, BISAC and THEMA, and if we're not involved, we follow developments like BibFrame in library subject standards. Identifiers are always a concern of ours. ISBN, GTN, ISNI are the primary ones these days. We're sorry that ISTC is a non-starter, but we are aware of the ISCC for content identification on blockchain. We're members of or follow other organizations and groups like ISO, W3C, GDSN, SAN, and we're involved with other standards organizations, primarily BISG and Editor. For BISG, we are sitting members on committees of theirs such as Metadata, Workflow, Subjects, Supply Chain, and Identifiers. Noah Genner, our CEO, sits on the international steering committees for both ONIX and THEMA. Now, standards are nothing without governance, and BookNet Canada's board has provided the BNC Bibliographic Committee with a mandate to be in charge of all things metadataistic, including the Canadian English Language National Group for ONIX and the National Group for THEMA. We are the English language group because there is a French language group in Canada as well, under the guidance of BTLF, who are yet another organization we work closely with. We want you to participate. There's lots of room to do so. Get in touch with the email address in the lower right, and we'll put you together with something. Now, this is always a hard session to give because standards really shouldn't change much, so there's not necessarily much new to say. But this year, everything is different. It's all in the pit of the needed, important, and timely. And all the now old, new, and yet to be implemented is piling up. So I'm just going to dive in and start with ONIX. Where are we now? Well, the current ONIX code list is issue 52, and the version, current one, is 3.0.7. And spring 2021 should see the next version issue 3.0.8, which I actually reviewed last year, so it really isn't particularly new. But it hasn't been implemented over this year because it's actually been in beta testing. And it still represents what it did a year ago, which is that it is the addition of Block 8, production detail, to enable trading of assembly instructions for digital packages like ebooks, print on demand, or audiobooks. It's optional and unlikely to be seen in general ONIX feeds. But it's important to know that it's also not intended to support ordering. So what's happening in the marketplace is that there are other standards for transmitting the assembly instructions existing, but they often want the addition of the ONIX file. So there was seen to be an efficiency in attaching the assembly instructions to the ONIX record, seeing how as people are asking for it anyway. This leads to the problem. What happens if your block 8 winds up in general distribution and it isn't going out to a company who you want to create the new file? Well, if that happens, it's not actually a problem because there's nothing in block 8 that supports ordering, and that's intentional. The ordering instructions would be separated from the package that includes the ONIX file. The other thing to understand about version 8 has a couple of other minor additions on them. Now, to take the second one on the list here first, block 7 promotional events was the subject of the previous version change. And it has an additional component being added into this version change to add supporting resources to facilitate downloading of things like promotional materials. So it doesn't currently support any way of doing that, and it's being added in block 8. So promotional event, which you probably haven't implemented yet, will have in the next block a new component added. Another thing being added is there's a dedicated element for telephone number being added to the supply contact and product contacts that appear in P19 and P25. Now, that seems kind of weird that telephone number wasn't already there, but it's an interesting thing in terms of ONIX theory why it's being made as an addition at this point. It's being made because people have asked for it, but editors' thinking was that you can't automate a telephone number. I mean, a computer will never need to call the telephone number. So if a telephone number appears in the contact name, you have all the information you need in one swoop. The person's name, the telephone number. If you need to phone them, that's how you would do it. So they didn't see a need to implement a telephone number. I'm not entirely sure why, but people wanted one, possibly so that they could automate adding the telephone number to their contact list. I don't know. But that was why it wasn't in there. It was intentional. Even though you may think that editor does nothing but think of ways to bloat ONIX, they actually try their best to keep it as limited as possible. And this is being added because people wanted it. There's also a new element being added to the audience composite. Now, audience includes certain types of audience types, like say movie ratings and things like that. Anyway, and a need to have a free text element, in this case audience heading text, was found for supplementing information for things like those rating systems where you might need to know more information. And that's what's going on there. Well, what else is going on? ONIX has the ONIX 3.0 deadline that Amazon set has been extended to the end of this month, April 2021. Most Canadian publishers appear to have met or be on track for meeting that deadline, which is a deadline, I think, of Amazon's minimum needs because, as I'll go into a little bit later, the ONIX 3.0 that people are delivering to BiblioShare isn't actually very good. But that's not what we're discussing here. We will shortly. It remains unclear how much of the rest of the industry has changed to 3.0. I can say that major US retailers and data suppliers can work in 3.0 if they want to, and how much they have shifted from 2.1 to 3.0 may vary, but we believe pretty much everybody, all the major players, can work in 3.0 at this point. Now, Canadian distributors and retailers are still developing their 3.0, but they are developing it, and they are developing it now. I haven't heard that Indigo can accept it, but I've heard rumors to the effect that it's either this fall or next week that they can do it. I'm sure it will become clear soon. And when support for 2.1 can end really is not yet clear. So we're not advocating that anybody drop their 2.1 yet, and probably should expect to continue it. Another year would not be misplaced. Now, the overall quality of ONIX 3.0 in BiblioShare remains poor. I mean, it's not bad. It's mostly schema valid, although, to be honest, we do have more ONIX 3.0 files failing, or 2.1 failings, because they have 3.0 stuff in them. So there is a lot of stuff going bad in the supply chain. But of the 3.0 we see, there is a conspicuous quantity of 2.1 like structure in the 3.0 files that we get. Certainly more than a good quality ONIX 3.0 file should have. And I can report that US firms are saying they want to have the good quality ONIX 3.0 that delivers good quality 3.0 delivered to them. And many are starting to use the ONIX schema, which to ensure that they receive better quality. It seems likely that you'll get requests for changes as this all develops. If you are unsure about a requested change, that is a very good reason to contact BookNet Canada. If it's based on the standard, we can explain why it's important and confirm what the data should mean. We can help you interpret what's going on, and what we would like to be able to do is avoid having the flavors of ONIX problem get entrenched in ONIX 3.0. So that would mean that requesting good quality 3.0 should be normal and expected in the supply chain. We should welcome it because it means that if everybody's supporting good quality 3.0, there is no need for different flavors. We'll see how well that goes. We have hope. Now, one of the things we are doing is starting April 28th, we're bringing back the ONIX office hour, which was something we held for the transition. A weekly open call for questions and discussions about ONIX. And it basically is your problems drive our education goals. I mean, if you're having an issue, talking about it there is a good way of getting it on our plate for things like education and blog posts and such things. It's not limited to ONIX. I mean, if people want to talk about Thema or other standards, that'd be great. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to discuss, or for whoever is holding it, because it may not just be me, to be discussing BookNet products excessively in it, although we probably can do so. But it just is an appropriate place for it. It's largely the standards material, particularly ONIX, we're looking to support in this. Another thing I can report on is that BISG down in the States has been quite concerned about all this. I mean, the flavors of ONIX problem is something they're trying to discuss, and as part of that, they collected pain points into a document. It's a very interesting thing. It's got maybe 30 separate items in it. And this is just a partial list that I composed from it, just to give you some idea of like some of the things that are going wrong. Collections and product titles. Neither are really being supplied to match the 3.0 standard. It's a bit sad. And it's a particular problem in collections. I mean, series are a primary tool for selling, or should be. And if we can't get them right, and they really can't be used in the metadata, it's really a waste. Retailers should be able to create lists of products from the materials publishers supply to them. And 3.0 has some changes to title that are simple, in tune with how the data was saved in 2.1, at least if you supported indexing, and most companies do. That is just being ignored. It's just crazy making. Anyway, other problems. Using text instead of codes anywhere in ONIX is a bad idea, but in particular to express pricing models has been cited. My favorite, not supplying market territories, dates, or status in the product supply section, or the alternative to it, using sales rates, global dates, that's the dates associated with the publisher in 3.0, global dates or global status, as market-specific information. That's kind of crazy making. The marketing collateral composite is showing particular problems. It includes a section called audience. So each of the three sections that are in it, I mean, the marketing collateral material text section, and then there's one for citations, and there's also one for supplementary URLs. Each of them have a simplified code list, and then there's an audience composite that also is there in exactly the same way that price qualifiers are used in the price composite. So price type defines the price, and the qualifier determines who the price applies to, like libraries, institutions, and such like that. Well, in block 2, there are audience codes that perform the same function, and no one is using them. ONIX software that only supports selected code values or is lacking updates. Well, this just drives you crazy because you ask someone to use the right code and they say their software can't support it. Or weird things like 3.0 code only codes appearing in 2.1 or 2.1 only codes appearing in 3.0. It's just sad. Using the not for sale composite instead of sales rates. So sales rates type 03 to 06 stand in for not for sale codes, giving a variety of specific ways of defining the rates. Now, the not for sale composite exists to provide information about who owns the rights in the area where you don't have the sales rights to. So we very seldom see it being used for that purpose, but some companies are starting to use it to provide what should be provided as a sales rights type 03 to 06. This is a flavor of ONIX things. Some receivers want companies to send multiple reviews as a single entry. It's just, again, maddening. It's not good ONIX. And because other companies, other institutions are looking for things in ONIX, libraries have just noted that they ask in cataloging and publications, CIP, for specific values that can be supported in ONIX. Index and bibliography are part of the ancillary content like codes, and there is a city of publication element that can provide that information, and yet publishers don't include it in their ONIX. These are all just pain points that people are having in the industry. So that completes the ONIX portion, but I did want to note that a revision is planned on the BISG BNC best practices for North American metadata. This is a venerable document that was last revised in 2015. It remains the one document that clearly lays out the 35 things that at a minimum need support in metadata in North America. Each chapter is supported by a clear business case and needs statement. BISG, with support from BookNet Canada, is planning to update this important document. And this makes it a good time to ask questions like, well, what should I expect from others to support in my metadata? What do I owe others? And what's important today in metadata? And you should let us know, because participation is in the heart of standards. This is just the current table of contents I have here. I just wanted it to be in this document. Notice that even in 2015, we were using ONIX 3.0 and blocks as a model. And just to say something about blocks, because they're apparent here, they are just groupings of like things. Product description literally contains the bits that describe the book. Marketing collateral and content detail, block 2 and 3, isolate the materials that retailers need to sell the book. The collateral. What's the difference between them? Well, content detail provides structured data, which is why the audiobook table of contents is supported there. It's complex and has embedded stop-start times and such, so it is very structured, more structured than you would typically use in block 2. So in block 2, you would typically get by with, just regular and simple HTML. My point is simply that blocks exist to group sections, that understanding that is the first step in using them, or understanding what a block update is or how it might benefit your company. Now, this is certainly one of the old things I haven't much new to say about. But regional codes, they are important. Retailers want regional coding. We want you to use regional codes. So let's just review going on, starting with contributor place. First of all, it is a repeating composite supported by 10 codes. That means there are 10 pieces of granular information you can give in contributor place. There is not a single code like there is in ONIX 2.1 because there are a number of competing interests that exist. Now I'm going to go over 3 or 4 of them, starting with Code 08, nationality. This is how you designate a Canadian author. So this is what supports our long-standing, industry-wide, and very successful promotion of Canadian authors through bestseller lists, dedicated websites, and that glorious opportunity for flag markers on websites. Now, separate from that code is Code 04, currently resides in, which is being requested to support retailers and libraries' promotion of local authors. Now, the point that we really want to emphasize is nationality and currently resides in exist for 2 separate purposes and therefore need 2 separate composites to support them properly. I mean, yes, somebody may live in a city and they may be a national of the country that they live, of the city they live in. It would be quite common that that be the case, but it isn't always so. And for to use either one reliably, it needs to be specified for the purpose. Accuracy counts in metadata. Now, in order for currently resides in to work, it's important to understand that it needs all 3 codes supported in contributor place. It needs the country code and it needs the region code. And that's because, a city name like Victoria may appear in New Brunswick as easily as BC. I mean, if it appears in BC, we pretty much know which city Victoria we're talking about. But, even then, we need to know the region as well as the country that is going on. And then the location is a free text field for city name or regional subdivision. It might even have a place for something like a treaty group area, which in a sense is a geographic marker. Now, there is something new to say about contributor place. As of issue 50, which is a code list issue that came out, I guess, around spring 2020, a new code was introduced, code 00 associated with, to express unknown relationship types. What it exists to do is that if you have legacy ONIX 2.1 data and you want to provide it in 3.0, you now have a code to put it in, and that's what it's there for. And the main thing to understand about that is that this makes it easier to make the transition from 2.1 to 3.0 because you don't have to basically redo all your contributor placed things. You can now put them up as 00 and then potentially record by record, as you understand which code actually this author fits into, transfer the data over into the right place. So it gives you an easy way of doing that. The one thing we would request is you can't use code 00 and then provide multiple other codes in the same thing. I mean, you should be using the accurate code at all times. You don't have to do it for all your books all at once, but where you start using multiple entries, as you should, get rid of your code 00 because it doesn't make sense to be used with other codes. The other thing that we would just like to say is code 07 flourished in is being overused. And that's likely because it's the least defined code, so it was seen as multi-purpose and the most like 2.1. We would like to recommend it for use for dead authors where nationality isn't relevant, or, and this gets kind of tricky, because as a comparative value. So if you consider that someone might be born in a nation of, resides here, or recently resided here, was educated here, all of those are place names, but if you then say they flourished somewhere else, you are actually saying something. And that means that flourished in can be used regionally to great effect. From Canada's south, but flourished in its north. From Winnipeg, but flourished in Edmonton. Who knew it might happen? Educated in Medicine Hat, but flourished in Hollywood. I'm sure that's happened. Now, regional codes are important as subjects. Bookstores and libraries buy regionally because readers want locally defined books. Now, where, and this is on the part of the reader, where can influence identity, and identity is part of diversity. So the desire to find locally written material or material that applies to yourself is a part of own voices type mentality. But it happens regionally as well. So if a book is set in your hometown, you might want to read it just because of that. And it is a part of a concept that could be generally called diversity. And just when you get down to subjects, Winnipeg's North End, 1930 to 1950, is just not the same as the ward in Toronto during the late 19th century. So geography and time, and these are all important components of subjects. Now, Thema provides a superb qualifier list supported in its geography list 1, and there are over 180 Canadian geographic codes. And its time qualifier list provides 5-year increments for recent history, as well as centuries, half centuries, decades. I mean, you can get very, very granular. And we should also note that the BISAC regional theme list is much more limited, but it's still important. And if we can make a request, could we just say that citing non-use for not supplying BISAC merchandising or regional themes, a common statement, I have heard it at the BISG Metadata Committee more than once, or doing the same for theme qualifier lists, only means that retailers can't use what they don't have. Accurate regional coding can help sell books. It is wanted, it is requested by retailers, and it should be used. Can I be more emphatic? So this fabulous slide says next to nothing, but it does have one hidden piece of information. Now, BISAC's current version is 2020, and the normal cyclical revision would be to expect the next version out in December or November. It's on a yearly cycle. Thema is currently 1.4, and its next version, 1.5, is expected out this year around October, after the Frankfurt Book Fair. They expect to release a new version every second year thereafter. And when you check out the BISAC to Thema translator, you see that it's currently BISAC 2019 matched to Thema 1.4, so it's out of sync with the BISAC at the moment. So this is the important announcement, which is Thema has intentionally changed its cycle from being renewed in a spring thing near the London Book Fair to being renewed in the fall to more closely match BISAC. So things like updating the mapping that maps BISAC to Thema will be more in sync with reality. So I'm not actually sure when BISAC will be making a new mapping available. I believe it'll be relatively soon, but I'm not 100% positive, and they may, for time reasons, just decide to put it off to the fall. I wouldn't say that they'd be foolish to do that. Now, the big topic of the day is supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion in subjects. Now, last year, BISAC added a number of diversity-related codes, including support for own voices in fiction. Now, Thema has been building extensive support for diversity values ever since its inception, and it provides superb, well-documented support and use cases in its documentation. Qualifiers and codes can be applied to a wide spectrum of books, and an own voices qualifier code, to be used in conjunction with List 5 related to people's coding, is being considered for version 1.5. We have good things available to us, but I would now like to break for a little promotional moment. Diversity, equity, and inclusion in contributors is a particular problem. And if you missed the Tech Forum presentation, Moving Pieces, it details the work of a BNC-sponsored working group chaired by Nicole DeGray, looking at the pros and cons for supporting diversity values on authors. So watch that presentation to find out more about that working group. And look at BookNet's weekly e-news for upcoming events. And more. We had ONIX and Thema training in March as part of Tech Forum. Editors Graham Bell and Chris Sainer presented ONIX Essentials and Advanced so well as the Thema Essentials, that we are going to get them back to do it again this June. So see BookNet Canada's weekly e-news for upcoming events. We resume our discussion of subjects with the perennial question, BISAC or Thema? Which do I use? Both. BiblioSharing Catalyst support and display both. We ask that publishers support both to provide the best quality in metadata. The systems complement each other. BISAC groups books that sell in North America, providing a focused market overview, the punch you need to get your books to where they need to go. Thema provides a structured subject concept system that is truly international and translated into over 20 languages. Verbose, layered, subjects are focused by using qualifiers. Thema provides the structure retailers need to support discovery. Now, something I learned in the Thema's Essential course is that List 5 age qualifiers have a specific purpose that's different from the age ranges we provide in ONIX. They don't replace what we use in ONIX because they exist to modify Thema subjects. Well, it might be hard to have a book on racism intended for 4 years and up. Thema can code for it. A children's code in Thema is ageless without an age qualifier. So it's actually a requirement for children's books to provide one in just the same way that the BISAC subject system requires you to provide an age range in ONIX for juvenile or young adult books. Now, the ONIX age range exists for a purpose too. It exists to be used by professionals to help them place materials in general. It's like a database selection tool. It gives the age range for the book, narrow and focused and proper. But the Thema age qualifier modifies its subjects and nothing else. That's what it's there to do. That's why it's needed. But going back to handling diversity, that means the age qualifier as a subject modifier adds nuance and focus to the subject in a very real way. A variation from the age range in ONIX may actually be meaningful. To my slide here, in North America, both BISAC and Thema are better with the support of the other, and we are extremely lucky as a market to have the benefit of both. Retailer use comes with data availability. I can't stress this enough. We do have a pile of unimplemented potential waiting for use. Now, it's hard to understand Thema. And another thing that came up in the Thema Essentials course is that UK bookstores are starting to display it for discoverability. Before we start, I don't think what Blackwell's, what I'm showing here, has done it in the best way possible. I think Thema could give a better system than what they've done. So I recommend you look at Blackwell's and look around at how it's doing, but also look at Thema and begin to try and parse out how they could have done it better, because I don't think Blackwell's has stopped. So I mean nothing against what they have done. It's excellent and better than most, but I'm just simply saying Thema's got more potential than what they've done. And we're going to start at Mark Carney because that's someone we share with the Brits and it seems to be a good place. Now it's hard to see, so let's get that bigger. That's the Thema tree you're looking at. Social sciences to politics and governments to political science and theory. 3 levels of generalized subject to get to Mr. Carney's tome. Now on a major launch page for a section, in this case it's the section for teen and YA, children's, teenage, personal and social issues. So it's basically the personal and social issues of the children's section. And what is on the launch page is a sidebar to one side, all the headings that I'm giving here. So, personal and social issues can be broken down into body and health, self-awareness and self-esteem, emotions, family issues, death and bereavement, relationships, non-family, drug and addiction, disability and special needs, living with disease and long-term conditions, racism and multiculturalism, bullying, violence, abuse, and peer pressure. personal safety, runaways, truancy, and school problems. Now, there's also major other sections. So the personal and social issues has a tree out which these are not part of, but this other thing that one of the books relates to, I guess. I'm not entirely sure why it's here. But advice on career and further education leaving school is also provided as a side issue. And you also have a chance to step up a level to the social issues section, which is like the root of the personal and social issue section. So they give you quite a lot of choices for navigation on the sidebar. If you were to choose racism and multiculturalism from that sidebar, then the sidebar, the original things, would be the stuff over here. But what you can see is you have multiple pages, 48 books per page, of entries that looking like this. Like this is just the top line. It goes on for another 11 lines of book covers. So what's interesting is that, well, one book, Black and British, really clearly belongs. The other three aren't obvious inclusions. I mean, it's not a problem. I mean, the one is a fairy related to fairy tales, and the other two are clearly fiction by both title and cover. So let's choose one of those. I took the least likely book, We Hunt the Flame. So again, you can't really read it, so let's dive down. Okay, this book's subject root is actually teenage fiction, children's and teenage fiction, fantasy and magical realism, fantasy romance. Now, we have to assume, perhaps if you read the description, that there is some thematic relationship between this book and racism. But is that a problem? I had 48 other books to scan on this page, and there were filter tools to sort of help me to do so. And it was pretty easy to recognize what was a fiction book. So the fact is that they're giving fiction related to racism on some level as a thematic thing, as part of it, shouldn't be really seen as much of a problem. To be honest, I don't much like what Blackwell's did. I should be able to filter on age too. We've already determined that, properly speaking, thema should have an age thing on any of these books. And I suspect that that's what the issue is. Publishers don't like to provide qualifiers because it's too hard. The whiners. But I suspect that's what drove Blackwell's to their decision to do it this way. So given better thema, they could have done this job better. But the real point I would like to make is this is still better than what we usually see on retailers' websites. As a first start, retailer implementation of thema, this is way better than what we typically see for children's books. I believe it will only get better, and likely quickly, because this sort of discoverability is what will allow consumers to find books. Now, no one who reads some of the blog posts I write will be particularly surprised to hear me say this. Keywords cannot provide this. It is because thema is structured that Blackwell's can support this sort of subject spread. Now, BISG can be used this way too, and you often see it used that way by retailers in North America. But BISG's strength is not in supporting discovery. Its strength is in identifying market segments. I mean, it's a great benefit to sales data work. Now, thema would likely do better at benefiting sales analysis rather than sales data work, because it will provide more data points to test with. And my point here is keywords support neither of those things. They aid discovery by providing words you think customers will use that will help them find your books. Once they get a close hit to a book that they're looking for, what do you think they're going to do? Go back to that keyword? Or are they going to start using structured subject responses that are pertinent to the subject they're interested in? I mean, really, which do you think that they're going to use? Enough said on that. Another great topic for the day is accessibility. So it's really hard to go down into this without getting a bit into the weeds. So I'm going to give an overview of how I understand accessibility. It isn't intended to be comprehensive. I'm sorry for reading the slide. All books are digital, with print books being sourced from a digital file formatted for print, and an EPUB coming from a digital file formatted for screens. Well, there are physical books that meet accessibility needs, and they are described in edition codes in ONIX. Accessibility in this context is all related to EPUBs. The hard part of accessibility is learning how to make accessible ebooks, and certification programs, called Make Accessible, exist to help in that. The expected outcome from them is a workflow that incorporates accessibility features into the book's digital files from the outset, and thereafter all EPUBs from that publisher, all EPUBs would share them. The publisher would be recognized as a reliable source of accessible books. EPUBs have information on their accessibility features embedded in them using coding developed for schema.org. The EPUB's version is important because what can be created as a feature varies by version, and device support can be confirmed. Now, assuming I got that much right, and I'm pretty sure I do, then accessibility metadata. What is it and why are we doing it? Well, all EPUBs that don't disable features on readers can be said to be more accessible. It's only by optimization that an EPUB 3 gains its full accessibility potential. The primary purpose of the metadata is to document what functionality can be expected in advance of purchase, and to allow retailers to group accessible products appropriately. This metadata is needed so that an educator, librarian, retailer, or an individual client or customer can assess the product's suitability against specific needs. All right, that's all a good thing, and why government and society is promoting the creation of accessible EPUBs, and publishers can hope to grow sales through doing it. How? ONIX supports two primary tools using product form feature. Product form feature code 09 supports code list 196 e-publication accessibility details, as well as product form feature code 15 support for code list 220 e-publication format version code. Now, there's also a product form feature code 10 that supports a free text version. It's where you would put 2.1 level data into your 3.0 file, but a code list is what's going to give the retailer and these other things the ability to really find and confirm the correct thing. Free text, there's too many variables to be able to be sure that you got the version right. Code lists will be safe. Now, publishers usually have a couple of questions right from the outset. They want to know if there's a crosswalk from the EPUB coding in its schema.org version into the ONIX. And is there information on interpreting the ONIX codes in list 196, which are not written in the same way as the schema.org codes are? Okay, so the crosswalk is available at this URL from the A11y metadata.org organization. And the ONIX codes for list 196 actually are extremely, almost excessively detailed. So if you're unsure what's going on with the code list, make sure you have the full code list so you can read the details. I just selected this one, the alternate text, the full alternate text description. This is the note entry. So I'm just going to read it to give you the full sense of just how much information is available for interpreting the ONIX code lists in this section. All, or substantially all non-text content has full alternative textual description. Note, this applies to normal images, e.g. photographs, charts, and diagrams, and also to any embedded audio, video, etc. Audio and video content should include full alternative descriptions, e.g. audio described video, and transcript, subtitles, or captions. whether closed or open, and suitable for hearing impaired, as well as for visually impaired readers. Purely decorative, non-text content can be ignored, but the accessibility of resources delivered via a network connection, rather than as part of the e-publication package, must be included. Anyway, look for future developments. This is a growth area. And you can use other parts of ONIX that support accessibility metadata, just as an example. And again, this is from the ONIX Essentials course. So ONIX 3.0 treats digital products as just another book format. And the best practice would now be to use related products, product relation code 06 alternate format to describe the relationship between print and digital. After all, the product form should be supplied in the related product. So the old e-publication specific codes 13 and 27 are seemingly becoming redundant. But no, you can find use for them now. The accessibility list 196 code 19, print equivalent page numbering, benefits from the direct linking of the EPUB's ISBN to a specific print ISBN that matches the pages being cited in the EPUB. So educators will need to know the matching product, and product relation code 13 e-publications based on print product can be used to provide it. So this is what I mean. It's early days. Look for future development and recommendations like that can be implemented. There are a lot of sources of information about making EPUB accessible, more than I have time to include in here. But I would like to just highlight a particularly good webinar that's available. It was given at the International Supply Chain Seminar at Frankfurt in October 2020, under COVID times. So it's a webinar and available because of that. And it was an exceptionally good presentation that we can recommend as an overview. It was Building an Accessible Publishing Workflow, and it was presented by Martin Klopstock, Arthur Thompson from Kogan Page, and Sean Harrison from Book Genesis. Now, the link to it is available on BookNet Canada's blog, and that post can be found by Googling ICYMI 42 BookNet Canada. Come up to the top of the list. I am almost done. There are many more not yet implemented highlights I could discuss. Audiobooks come to mind. But two more we don't want you to forget are the ONIX for Books Acknowledgement Format Specification. It can support automation of messages. This is an important topic. Actually, the same blog post I just cited has another great presentation by John Bell discussing the problems associated with not being able to automate all these damn messages. In any case, you should care about the acknowledgement message because Amazon is using it. Things it's intended to support are confirm receipt of the original ONIX message, report to the original sender a summary of product records processed and updated into the recipient's database, report details of errors encountered or queries about the product data supplied, or return to the sender details of proprietary identifiers assigned by the recipient, as in Amazon's ASINs to your ISBN. And it can also be used for two-way communication. That would be very advanced. So don't forget about this. It may not be the primary thing you need to implement first, but don't forget about this. It will be important, and soon. The other thing I just want to bring up, ISNI.org, ISNI. We really do want publishers to start using this identifier for content producers. Hopefully you're familiar with it already. BookNet Canada is a member organization of ISNI. Editor provides the administration. BTLF, our sister organization in Quebec, is a registrar, as is BANQ, the Bibliographic Archives Nationales de Quebec, the Quebec equivalent to Library and Archives Canada. And while Library and Archives Canada isn't a registrar, they are a user of ISNI and interested and motivated on it. With all these organizations, you'd think there'd be an easier route to getting one, and that's something that we're looking into now. The thing is, about 50 to 70% at least of Canadian authors have one now. Most established publishers of any size already have an ISNI assigned to them as well. There is minimal to no cost in looking them up. Companies like Google are assigning ISNIs in order to attract their YouTube creators. And other large media organizations in other disciplines are using ISNIs in the same way. Tracking content producers is helpful to an industry. It's not just a book thing. It is content of any type. So these things are being assigned as they are needed by libraries, we think. At least that's one of the possible explanations for why there are so many assigned. But that's after publication, of course. So if you were to look at your current list of new books, with many new authors perhaps, you're going to find a lot fewer assigned. I know investing in your backlist is always a bad idea, but it will be the easiest and most productive thing to do now. So having 10% of a list supporting ISNI won't help, but 7% of your books having a valid ISNI associated within them would start moving the needle. We have one company in BiblioShare who's done it to that level now, and bless their souls for doing it. But we need more than one company to do that before a retailer is going to be able to make use of this. So do us a favor. Consider at least finding out if your publisher name has one assigned. And if it does, just add it to your ONIX feed. In the publisher composite, as a publisher identifier, just add it in. If you have a proprietary one now, that's great, leave it in. Just get the ISNI into the publisher composite. And while you're there, look up some of your established authors and just confirm how easily you can get the ISNIs on them found. Look at the type of entry. ISNI is not intended to provide comprehensive book lists or a list of the content anyone's produced. All that they're trying to do is include enough of the material that this content producer has produced to make identification problem. So anybody who thinks that they need to have content by this person would probably find some references to these books on information that they have about this author, which is generally speaking stuff that libraries or other people would have available to them. Anyway, make yourself familiar with it. Do yourself a favor. Why? Well, ISNIs are a persistent and unique identifier that will help retailers group books by the same author. It's really no more complicated than that. And an ISNI for your publishing company will help retailers and other people group your books together with your publisher name. It is the first effective identifier we've had since the 1970s when the ISBN was started. Identifiers make databases work. And this is one that we can start using cheaply, effectively, and meaningfully. Other industries are doing it, we can too. And with that, I'm Tom Richardson, and the slow, sad show of unimplemented standards you might consider closes. Get in touch, participate, and thank you very much.